Look at the time now.
Hey!
Gather up the book, pop in the DVD, sit back and enjoy the super awesome BVM. How's it going, bookworms? Filmsters? I'm a clean-shaven katana, and welcome back to another BVM. You know, it's actually been a while since we've seen each other. Also, it's been a while since we've done a sequel review. And as a matter of fact, Harry Potter is the only series that had its sequels done. I should actually get back to that. No. Today we're going to be revisiting the story that got popular through child murders, the Hunger Games series. Now, I know, in the past, I've said that the first book was okay-ish. It didn't really make an impact on my life, and I wasn't too excited to start the trilogy. But after what I heard and what I saw in reviews, Catching Fire is actually the make it or break it point for most people. I don't know what I'm getting myself into. Actually, I looked at the book and I was like, should I do it right now? Or should I just save it for some other time? But you know what? I'm willing to give it a shot. So sit back, relax, and enjoy as we dive right back into the fucked up corruption of Panem. Here's Catching Fire. So, after the events of the 74th Hunger Games, things have not been so good. Katniss and Peeta continue to lie about their love in order to keep themselves and their family safe. The possible romance blossoming between Katniss and Gale is slowly dying from jealousy. But aside from teen love, Katniss has become some sort of symbol for the uprising revolution. This in turn captures the attention of President Snow, the capital leader. Knowing about her rebellion status and false love, he threatens her to shut that noise down before it gets any more chaotic. But the damage is already done. People are fired up to rebel, and although those districts get their punishments the same as promised to District 12. Work hours in the mines are increased, rations are being limited, the mortality rate is rising with people getting sick and dying all over. Overall, it's just a terrible time, and it goes on for months until the 75th Hunger Games comes back around, also known as the 3rd anniversary of the Quarter Quell Games. What makes this really horrible is that the Quell is reaping previous game victors, and since Katniss is the only girl victor from District 12, she has no choice but to go back in. With President Snow over her shoulder, Peeta and Gale making love complicated, her PTSD, and trying to repress her reputation from the entire country, Katniss Everdeen faces dilemmas too big to handle alone. Wow, that is a heavy-handed plot. I mean, the games haven't even started yet, and already things have gone on the shitter. Who are the unlucky souls for today's misery? Well, since no one's come to assassinate her
Yet.
Katniss is still our protagonist, but I'm happy to say that there are some major character developments her way. She still got her selfless nature of putting people before herself, such as feeling grateful about Parcel Day and everyone in District 12 receiving meals every month, but that's probably the only good thing she got from the aftermath of the games. One crucial change is the amount of trauma it caused her mentally. She can't look at her sister without thinking of Rue. The constant charade of pleasing the capital and her fans won't let her forget about her time in the games. Even after President Snow pays her a visit, she develops this paranoid side, always thinking that she's being watched and never having a moment to herself. Although these negatives are frequent, her level of trust definitely grows throughout the book. I mean, from the first book, you can see how much she struggled with trying to trust Peeta, but Catching Fire really makes her transition strong from being a loner and looking out for number one, to becoming cooperative and sharing the leadership skills everyone expects her to have. Peeta is still the most lovable guy you will ever meet. He's just too kind for his own good. I would have to say though that he does play the alpha role more when the time calls for it, such as the section where they undergo a P90X training montage for the Quarter Quell. And he still knows how to keep the capital entertained. He's still able to make his love for Katniss believable, because it is, but in the book you see Peeta understands her feelings well enough to just keep her safe and not expecting more. Gale is the other half of Katniss's heart, and his mind is wrapped around the idea of rebelling alongside the other districts. And that's it? Well, at least for now. Trust me, I have so much more to say about Gale in the pros and cons sections, so we'll get right back to him. Haymitch is still the alcoholic mentor we all know and love, although this book does introduce a bit of Hunger Games History 101 by focusing on Haymitch's victory in the second quarter Quell. But aside from that, there's really nothing more different than how he was since the first book. And then there's President Snow, the villain for this book, and possibly for Mockingjay too. He's that kind of villain that doesn't rely on brute force, but his overwhelming political power makes a statement. A real statement. He rarely shows up physically, and yet it's easy to point all the damage and tragedy back to him once he makes family threats towards Katniss. He tries destroying her mentally and through strong bonds with others. It's incredibly cruel. And those are the majority of the reoccurring major characters. But god damn it, this is a sequel, so of course we're going to get some new faces. You don't see them until the actual quarter Quell games, but they still make their appearance strong. And Finnico there is quite the character, one of the youngest victors to win the Hunger Games. The book describes him with such charisma as being incredibly handsome, tall, athletic, blah blah blah. But for some reason, the fact that he's from the District 4 fishing industry and his main weapon is a trident, I can't help but think, Suzanne, you been reading some DC comics lately? You got some inspiration? The Creatures of the Deep? That kind of vibe? Yeah? But overall, this guy's amazing. He becomes one of the major allies for Katniss and Peeta during the Court of Quell, and can I just say, thank God Katniss x Finnick isn't a thing. From the first meeting near the chariots, it's already established from the conversation and Katniss herself that she isn't attracted to him at all. From there, the relationship grows to more of a friendship / alliance, and that's more of a relief on my end. I mean, I'm already trying to deal with this mess. I don't need to see the start of a love quarter. Or is it love square? It's probably love square. Why the hell did I say quarter? Nah, fuck it. Joanna Mason is the only female victor of District 7, the lumber industry. Her introduction is a bit more appealing, and her relationship with Katniss is more feisty and on opposite ends. BT and Wyrus are victors from District 3, which focuses on electronics. Nicknamed Nuts and Bolts, these two are a bit quirky and weird to the other tributes, but their intellect is no joke. Luckily, Katniss isn't much of harsh judgment and makes a friendly pact with these two. Then of course there are other tributes. I mean, this would be a pretty boring game if there were just 6 people, but they don't really stand out as much. So, let's move on to the pros and cons, starting with the pros, and man, there's actually a good bit of them. I'll start with how this book solidifies the true conflict for this trilogy, showing a lot more than just the games. That Barry incident from the first book's ending sparked the uprising for another rebellion against the Capitol. If Catching Fire was just another excuse to make a bigger and better Hunger Games that tops the original, then I probably would have hated it. But bringing in the elements of political oppression and focusing more on the separate districts and their distress made the reading more interesting. It started to feel like this series was going somewhere, and comparing Catching Fire to the original Hunger Games, I can't see it as a standalone book anymore. Now when I hear The Hunger Games, I think of it as one of the best hooks for its sequel. What better way to introduce a series than by putting readers into the perspective of participating in The Hunger Games? And once that's all out of the way, Catching Fire shifts perspective into the corrupt system and the start of a rising revolt. For me, Catching Fire really gave the series more substance. Which leads into my next positive, the stakes were raised tenfold. This goes more on the lines of, what's Katniss fighting for? In Hunger Games, her motives were to keep her sister safe and stay alive in the games. Simple. Well, not simple, but you know what I mean. Now with the expanding plot of the rebellion, she's got a lot more on her plate. She's fighting not only to keep her family safe, but everyone who's been lumped into her dilemma. She's fighting to convince President Snow that she's not the symbol of rebellion. She's fighting against the constant nightmares of the previous Hunger Games. I mean, there's a lot more motives that gives us a reason to want Katniss winning at the end. Her pain and struggles are explicit enough to sympathize with, and will be there for her when she eventually conquers them. And also, this year's Hunger Games is personally more interesting than the last. Each quarter Quell has some sort of special theme to it, and this year's no different. Having victors go against other victors just sounds awesome. The standard Hunger Games just have kids fighting against other kids, most who are inexperienced and susceptible to death. We were already introduced to Katniss's hunting background from the beginning, and the Hunger Games was just one big open season to her. The probability of her chances to win were pretty high and didn't really feel challenging. Emotionally compromised? Yes, but she honed her hunting skills and the fact that most of the competition was weak. This year though is a whole different story. She's going up against experienced killers, hunters, skilled warriors who also won their previous games. The probabilities of winning are a lot slimmer. Katniss cannot just rely on skills alone. Teamwork is a necessity. And the book treats it just as it sounds. The tone leading up to the games is very grim. There are so many goodbyes thrown around, the preparations were so real, and the fact that Haymitch highly requested them to make pacts with the other tributes just shows how seriously they're taking this. I always got the dead man walking vibe from this game in particular, that they wouldn't make it, and it felt real. I think that's enough with the good, because as much as I enjoyed it, the book does have its faults. And I'll start with the same problem I found in the first Hunger Games book. The hand holding. Again, we're treated to a writing style that makes it feel like idiots who can't follow along. The exposition points in the book are so repetitive and redundant. Everything needs to be explained. Everything needs to be explicit, even if the message was already clear in subtlety. Instead of showing things through dialogue or the actions of the characters, Suzanne decides it's much better to flat out tell you how Katniss is feeling, thinking, feeling, breathing, feeling. I mean, how many times do we really need to be reminded about Rue, or the games, or the tragedy of everything that's happening to her? Once or twice is okay, but after that limit, we get it. We know how bad the situation is. There wasn't really any need to extend pages telling us what we already know and learned from the previous book. It sucks, I hate it, don't care what anyone says. Repeating the same thing over and over again and carrying no significant meaning at all isn't good writing. The pacing for the story isn't quite the best either. The time spent with Katniss in District 12 took way too long, and the section focused on the court of Quell was a bit rushed. I know that scenes showing the capital's reign over the districts were needed to set up motives for the rebellion, but most of that period is covering the dilemma between Katniss and her two lovers. And from there, I just gotta talk about this. This needs to be addressed. Yes, I am talking about Gale's character development and this weak ass love triangle. This could have been the perfect opportunity to develop Gale's character and strengthen that relationship with Katniss. And I'm 100% Team Gale because it's so obvious for them to be together. They have much more of a background together. They share bonding time in the woods. She even calls her love with Peter the capital's fabricated design. And if you think Peter will be a set or jelly, he comes to terms with it by the end. The stars are aligned for this. It was destined to be. So why, Suzanne, why did you not go for the chance? In the span of 9 to 10 months, what do? You make Gale start ignoring Katniss because of overwhelming jealousy, because she didn't reciprocate the feelings back. The only connection they share is when he's hurt or she needs something. And yes, it is a tragedy, but at the cost of keeping his character underdeveloped is not a good trade. And what's filled in for that time? More time with Peter, as if we haven't had enough. The first book already fleshed out his persona, and even so, we already know that the relationship is bullshit, only used as a tactic that helps Katniss gain supporters and survive. And then once it's all over, it starts feeling like she's in debt, paying back for the situation she brought him in. But that bond Katniss and Gale shares is real. Not real enough to be on equal grounds though. Suzanne made this love triangle so one-sided. There's too much attention to one character that it's obvious what the outcome's going to be. We know so much about Peeta, but Gale? He hunts with Katniss and wants to rebel. Anything else? No. He's thrown in to make the decision hard, but there really isn't a choice. It's Peeta. It's going to be Peeta. There's no other way. Favoritism chose Peeta. It's Peeta! Oh my god, I am getting way too passionate over this. I mean, this is not even my favorite series. I don't care. What the hell is going on? But yeah, that's catching fire for me. Could they have executed the initial plot better? Yes. Could they have straightened this complicated love? Oh, definitely. But with the amazing build-up, Catching Fire still brings excitement to this series, aiming for a conclusion that some part of me is really excited to see play out. And although there are some who didn't feel so fondly of the book as I did, there's still the movie that follows. Did it change opinions? Well, let's find out. Here's the adaptation, Catching Fire. So our story begins with Katniss looking over the lake I assume is the same one she and her dad used to go together. Gale finds her and they both start hunting for a Thanksgiving feast. And for this scene alone, it already does a great job showing the visual representation of Katniss's PTSD from the previous game. Well, that's practically a given. I mean, in most cases, movies have to translate thoughts into body movements, and anything that leans far away from that repetition is always cool. After the minor freakout, Katniss and Gale return to District 12, where Katniss needs to get ready to depart on the Victory Tour. Although this conversation does happen in the book, it's not as paced and kind of rushed to reach this one moment.
I had to do that.
He's not lying. For the plot's sake, he really had to do it. Just once. Just once. Katniss returns to the Victor's village to get Haymitch, or better yet, wake him up with a cold pitcher of water, and we witness the current status between our Hunger Games lovebirds.
Would you like some bread, Katniss?
No, I ate at the hop, but thank you.
You're welcome.
You two have a lot of warming up to do before showtime.
So, in the span of 6 minutes, we already have complications between childhood friends, a pretend couple ignoring each other, and scarred memories. Didn't take that much time to get the point across. Oh my god, I'm loving this already. Give me more, movie. Give me more.
Did you have a good walk, dear?
Walk. I was just out.
We have visitors.
Miss Everdeen, this way, please.
Ah, yes. President Snow, the cherry on top for Katniss's list of problems. He meets with her, warning about the potential she has in starting an uprising with the other districts. Hell, the possibility of breaking in the war. Her only option is to do extremely well in the tour by looking madly in love with Peeta, proving that she's not mocking the capital in any way. And if this video clip doesn't prove how much she's watched, I don't know what will. I don't know what kind of free time Snow has praying over teenage love, but it's blackmail, so it's okay? Once Snow leaves, Effie and the beauty crew make their return, along with Katniss's greatest friend, Cinna. They all come together to prepare Katniss and Peeta for a live interview with Caesar.
Welcome! Welcome! Last year, the 74th Hunger Games brought us the greatest love story of our time.
Wait a minute. Last year,
Last year, the 74th Hunger Games.
Last year,
the 74th Hunger Games.
isn't the Victory Tour supposed to take place 3 weeks after the games? I get the sense that the movie's trying to rush itself to get to the Court of Quell because the book took a sweet ass time, but at least I understood the general timeline of events that took place. Here, I'm just trying to figure out why wait a full year to show these people around. I mean, look at this. Since a year's passed, this whole unprepared act between Katniss and Peeta makes sense. Forcibly kissing to push the idea of love, speechless on what to say about one another.
We're good. That's it? That's all we get?
I mean, the fake love is gone, but somehow they managed to pull it off again.
It was nice acting.
You too.
The next scene brings the Victory Tour as Effie's trying to hype up the moment, but only pisses Katniss off about earning all this for winning the murder spree. She's alone in the caboose as Peeta joins her, trying to mend their friendship. This is a friendship. Even Peeta agrees that he wants to be friends. Look, they're even sharing their favorite colors, like friends. Case in point, they should be friends. Nothing more. So after talking green and orange, Katniss sees a flash of rebellion as they enter into District 11.
Well, I never. This is not very festive.
Oppression, working in the fields, obvious total domination. I agree, Effie. What the hell is wrong with these people? On their way to the ceremony, Effie hands them cards to provide a eulogy to the fallen tributes, Thresh and Rue. Peeta starts his speech very orderly, but then drops the cards and somehow channels Oprah, promising the fallen tributes family portions of his winnings every month! But when Katniss comes out to speak, it's something truly beautiful. With the orchestra slowly ramping up and all those memories from the last movie between her and Rue, you can actually feel the sincerity in her voice when apologizing. I love this moment in the book and the movie captured it so well. even the result of it. An old man whistles the Mockingjay tune and pulls out the 3-finger sign from District 12, already signaling his execution. Katniss is dragged inside the Justice Building before the trigger is pulled, and Haymitch takes her and Peeta up the attic where Katniss shares her meeting with President Snow. Peeta becomes upset that he wasn't told sooner, and Haymitch lays down the harsh reality of their victory.
Haymitch, please just help me get through this trip. Please just help us get through this.
This trip, girl, wake up. This trip doesn't end when you get back home. You never get off this train. It's every year your private life becomes theirs. That means that every year they're gonna drag you out and broadcast the details of your romance.
And for the next couple of districts, they obey like little capital puppets, reading their cards, fake smiles, barely taking notes to the other districts' cries of anguish and desire to rebel. The one scene that really got to me was this little girl right here.
One day, I'm gonna volunteer, just like you did.
I can't. I can't. That's just terrible. Eventually, Haymitch calls them out on their wooden performance, asking them to find a way to enhance their love. Katniss suggests marriage, and yeah, that's it. They get married, just like that. Just as nonchalant in the book too. Katniss suggests it, Peeta agrees, and boom, married couple. Now I was hoping the movie would amplify it in some way, but no need. Moving on. After seeing Gale totally not giving a damn about it, Katniss and Peeta arrive at President Snow's mansion for a party of wild entertainment and bulimic appetites.
Here.
What's this?
It's for when you're full.
It makes you sick. So you can go on eating.
How else could you taste everything?
The fake lovers go for a dance where Effie introduces Plutarch Heavensby, the new game maker, since Seneca offed himself. And the movie does well in introducing Plutarch and nothing more. Whereas the book went above and beyond by sliding in a little detail about the Mockingjay in his watch. And since the symbol has been drilled into our heads so many times, we know what it means. It just ruins the surprise at the end. He might as well just smile and whistle the Mockingjay tune on his way out. The party guests gather around to listen to President Snow congratulate Katniss and Peeta on their engagement, though hints to Katniss that he was not convinced. On the train ride home, Katniss wakes from a nightmare and walks it off, discovering the rebellion beginning in District 8, which is also a good change since Madge is non-existent in the movie adaptations. This segues into a conversation between Snow and Plutarch where they plot to use the media and propaganda to ruin Katniss's reputation. And to be honest, it sounds like it could work. While several people are being executed, the district will be made to believe that Katniss's only concern is where the entree should be, the soup or the turkey. Really puts an image on how much of a tactical genius Plutarch is. Not bad. Back in District 12, Katniss finds Gale talking with him about the idea of running away from the problem. But what's floating around his mind?
Do you love me?
Jesus, man, wrong place, wrong time. I agree with Katniss on this. There's a lot more to think about right now. Like the rebellion in District 8 that's putting a nice spark in his eyes. Or how new peacekeepers are busting into the district under the command of Thatch, a real militia brute. There should be more to Gale. I'd like there to be more to him than this. But it's all we got. Kissing. I love you. Do you love me? Fuck Peeta. Thanks, Suzanne. Meanwhile, the new peacekeepers are raising hell. And I mean, they're literally raising hell by putting the Hob into flames. Katniss helps the victim while Gale performs a beautiful tackle on Commander Thatch. What a stunning performance. Too bad he's punished by a whipping. Katniss tries to intervene but gets slugged. Haymitch steps in with Peeta and they end the beatdown. They bring Gale to be treated in Katniss's home, and it's scenes like these that represent true, honest to God love. Listen to these words.
Hey, Catnip.
Hey,
Thought you'd be gone by now.
I'm not going anywhere. I'm gonna stay right here. Cause all kinds of trouble.
Me too.
This feels real. Both care for one another deeply, whereas every time you see Peeta, we know the love is one-sided. It feels one-sided. Even Peeta coming over to care for Gale. He knows how much he means to Katniss, but still wants to help like a friend. Must stop getting so invested in crappy love triangle. And things get only worse from here. News about the whipping reaches Snow, thinking that Plutarch is losing control on the situation, but he proposes a new idea. And boy, is it one of the most heartbreaking moments in this movie as Snow announces the third quarter Quell.
On this, the third quarter Quell Games, the male and female tributes are to be reaped from the existing pool of victors in each district.
Finally taking it all in that she's participating again, Katniss runs into the woods and expresses her pain in violent screams. She then shares a drink with Haymitch, proposing to save Peeta from entering again. Then, in case you're wondering, this isn't out of love. This is for the fact that Peeta is a good person, and Katniss believes that if anyone should survive, it should be someone worth saving. Lack of self-worth, not love. We get a quickie scene with Katniss and Gale. It's short, but it's something. And then it's time for the reaping. Now, of course, Katniss gets picked, and Haymitch is actually chosen. But Peeta volunteers in his place. Without any goodbyes, they are dragged straight to the train. And you know what that means, folks. That's right. Hunger Games 2.0. 2.0. 2.0. 2.0. 2.0. 2.0. 2.0. Kick it! Like I said earlier, these games are much more interesting. It's not random kids they're going up against, but past victors, past winners.
Last year was child's play. This year, you're dealing with all experienced killers.
Alright. What does that mean for us?
Haymitch's biggest advice is to pick allies, so they go through the list of the competition, pointing out traits, strengths, and weaknesses. And the first one to be introduced physically is Finnick there, screwing around with Katniss and offering sugar cubes. Just from this conversation alone, it's easy to see how much fun Sam Claflin must be having being this charming, charismatic character.
Do you want a sugar cube? I mean, it's supposed to be for the horses, but I mean, who cares about them, right? They got years to eat sugar, whereas you and I, well, if we see something sweet, we better grab it. What happened to the pretty little girl dresses?
I outgrew them.
You certainly did.
Also, I'm following the book while listening to the scene, and the movie makes it more enjoyable as it doesn't pause in between dialogue. One sugar cube, he says, and then it goes into exposition. That could have been settled through dialogue instead of spoon feeding. No thanks. After that greeting, Katniss and Peeta get on their chariots and show off Cinna's fabulous new design, glowing charcoal. They take one glaring look at Snow, specifically Katniss, declaring that it is fucking on!
I want to introduce you to some special friends of mine. This is Cedar and Chaff from District 11.
Apparently Katniss is not only an open book, but also a 24/7 kissing booth. I mean, there's just something about her that makes people kiss her unexpectedly. But so far with the other tributes, we met Aqualad, the overly friendly Shaft, and now Johanna Mason from District 7. And I bet you're all wondering how could she possibly top the rest.
So what do you think? Now that the whole world wants to sleep with you.
I don't think that the whole
I wasn't
world-
talking to you.
Okay.
You want zip?
Yeah.
Thanks. Let's do it again sometime.
Thank you.
The look on Katniss's face when Peeta agrees to unzip her. That whole scene in general, I mean, it's golden. It's fucking golden. So next day is training day. Katniss and Peeta are checking out the competition, but from what we see, it looks like the 1,001 ways they could die from the hands of these tributes. Katniss hangs out a bit with Wyrus and BT, the weirdos from District 3.
The corner of the table. Plutarch?
Next to him.
Force field.
How do you know?
Electromagnetic.
How can you tell? Is it obvious or something?
And she also spends some time with Mags, the female District 4 tribute. They trade fishing and hunting secrets, leading to Katniss showing off her archery skills. Now I gotta say, the budget really improved with these cubed holograms. nevertheless, her skills are still on point, and they impress about half of the other tributes. Haymitch says that she could pick her allies. Anyone she wants.
I want Wyrus and Beatty.
Joanna calls them nuts and bolts.
Well, okay, good. Now, who else?
Mags.
2 weirdos and an old lady. Nah, I don't see a problem with that. That's the dream team right there. They're gonna die in the first 5 minutes. Jesus Christ. Next scene shows us the lineup for the private session. This time, Peeta makes a statement by painting a portrait of Rue on the floor, and Katniss continues her streak by showing the game makers the end of Seneca Crane. This really doesn't make any sense because in the first movie, we're shown Seneca foreshadowing his death with the berries. I know this is trying to correct itself with the book, but overall it's just confusing. Then, just like the last games, we need to cover the live interviews with Caesar. As Katniss dresses up in the wedding gown forced upon her by President Snow, the other tributes are putting on the show. Tears are flowing, last minute love poems are recited, even Joanna goes batshit crazy.
Yes, I'm angry. Deal was it if I win the Hunger Games, I get to live the rest of my life in peace. But now, you want to kill me again. You know what? That! Everybody that had anything to do with it!
All right then.
But as always, Katniss comes out on top with the help of Cinna making a permanent fashion statement for Snow and all of Panem to take in.
Am I correct in assuming that this is the gown that you would have worn on that day, yes or no?
Yes, President Snow thought everyone would want to see it.
Will you do us the honor, please? Please, please. Oh my God! Oh my! It's a bird. It's like a. Oh, it's got feathers. It's like a.
Like a mockingjay.
Sit down. Take a bow.
She's done it. She's officially taken a dump right on Snow. And there's no way Peeta's going to win this year. I think she got it covered. No way.
I wouldn't have any regrets at all. If it weren't for the baby.
Dude! I stand corrected. The kid's just too good every damn time. This new source of information riles up the crowd, wanting to end the games. Even more once all the tributes begin holding hands. But alas, the games are still going to happen, and Haymitch and Effie give their final goodbyes. Haymitch offering his final words of advice.
Stay alive. Katniss, when you're in the arena, remember who the real enemy is.
Oh, and here's a rare sight. Katniss and Peeta together, holding each other before their scheduled doom. Don't see that too often. No. The Court of Quell has finally arrived. The tributes are loaded up and given their trackers. Plutarch is preparing for his role as game maker since he's kinda on thin ice with Snow after what transpired in the interviews. And this moment, this goddamn moment, your heartstrings are pulled by seeing another goodbye between Katniss and Peeta. But right as they contain, their peacekeepers come in and beat the living crap out of him before her very eyes. A little off-putting seeing this ugly crier, but nonetheless, it makes you feel enough that you just want to go and just save him. I mean, his fashion is too good for this world. He doesn't need this. As she rises to a new arena, Katniss composes herself and awaits the countdown. And from there, it's all happening again, though not as intense. Like the book described, a majority of districts don't have such large bodies of water, thus not knowing how to swim and possibly drowning within the first hour. Then we factor in the allies. With the bracelet, Finnick proves to be an ally to Katniss, and thank God, because who knows how quickly her journey would have ended if he didn't spear that tribute. And since Finnick is on her team, this also includes Mags, who finds Peeta water wrestling with another tribute. So, although it doesn't show the savagery of the 74th Hunger Games, it does in fact show some improvement on Katniss' character into becoming the leader others can consider worth saving. So, after the movie attempts to scare the audience into believing Peeta can actually be dead, you know, after developing all of this, Districts 12 and 4 run into the jungle away from death, but somehow stumble into another problem. PETA is down for the count. Again, after 5 minutes ago where we thought he was drowning, and Katniss cries over him as Finnick provides the kiss of life. PETA comes back and Katniss gives him the kiss of guilt, not love. I don't know how many times I'm going to say it. It's probably getting annoying at this point. Have people started believing me yet?
Someday I want to love someone that much.
It's not real! It's fake! You know what? Why bother? The rest of the day kinda ends flat. Katniss discovers the force field is dome-shaped and they find some place safe to camp for the night and watch the fallen tributes. Haymitch becomes a little charitable and sends the group a spiel, finding some refreshing water in the trees. Aww. Well, isn't that too safe? It's a shame this is being televised because audiences tend to get a bit bored at this point. So now it's time to throw in some flair. During her watch, Katniss notices a hazy fog heading her way, and from the looks of it, it's gonna hurt like a bitch. Everyone's now alert and running away, and although the effects do look pretty amazing, it's just not as intense as the book's depiction of this scene. The desperation in trying to carry both Mags and PETA with limbs failing. That final mental picture of Mags dying by wild seizures. It's all terrible, and these visual blisters aren't enough to capture the true terror of the poisonous fog. I mean, no disrespect to Mags, but that sacrificial wall didn't look as meaningful or dramatic as the book built it up to be. I mean, it looked like she just dropped something and went to go pick it up. With Mags dead, the 3 tributes get one final blistering before tumbling down a landslide and escaping the overwhelming fog. They find a small pool of water, learning that it heals the blisters, but with a small burn first. My lord, ease him into it, guys. I mean, I know he's part fish, but those blisters require some delicacy. You goddamn sadist. They eventually recover, but encounter another problem. I want to say these are some sort of Siberian Arctic monkeys, but they're looking like vicious baboons right now. So, as the baboons are posing a threat, the group tries to find their way to the beach. PETA is facing death again for the 100th time, but the District 6 Morphling comes to sacrifice herself. This movie secretly wants PETA to die. This story wants PETA to die. But Suzanne won't have it. She won't. She just won't let Katniss's totally obvious end of the series lover to rest. Like the fog, the baboons are prohibited from proceeding any further, and Katniss and PETA are with the Morphling on their last dying breath. Book definitely captures this scene well, as there was more context with PETA, the Morphling, and their fondness of painting and colors. Here, the only justification is that she saved his life, but they actually shared some small moment in the book. I gotta admit though, like always, the movie just knows how to dramatize the crap out of it. After her corpse is collected, morning comes around and the group is eating clams. After witnessing the tidal wave, Katniss spots Joanna, Wyrus, and BT. They group up with BT working on his wire and Katniss cleaning up Wyrus as she's spouting tick-tock.
Tick-tock. Tick-tock. It's a clock. It's a clock.
With the book's interiority, it would make sense of how Katniss came to the conclusion that it was a clock, whereas a moviegoer would just look at that lightning tree and wonder, what the hell is she talking about? But she's right, it is a clock, with the lightning tree acting as noon and all the events happening every hour. The fog, the monkeys, the wave, the blood shower Joanna was covered in earlier, it all makes sense, which makes Wyrus a total genius.
Hickory dickory dock, the dog barked at the clock. The clock struck.
And then 10 to 11, the wave. What about everything else? Did you guys see anything?
Hickory dickory dock.
Hey, that I don't know. Maybe she's also just crazy by coincidence. Can someone calm her down for a bit? Thank you. No! The group is now under attack from the other tributes. More corpses are made, but Plutarch is upset that they actually figured out the time code. So he destroys their hopes and spins the cornucopia around and around, losing Katniss in the water. But she rises safely to the surface and they all get off the clock. And if you think you've seen the cruelty of all these hours, think again. Katniss hastily runs into the forest looking for the voice of her distressed sister. But that's just it. Just voices from Jabberjays echoing through the trees. Finnick gets caught into the mess by hearing the screams of his lover Annie. And as they try to return, they can't escape. They're stuck for the hour. And it's really screwed up. That's actually a form of sound torture, just listening to your loved ones in pain for 60 minutes. My God, can you imagine listening to the worst possible sound for that long? Through sheer will, they survive the hour, and they gather around to hear BT's brilliant trap to wire up the lightning tree, electrocuting the water and damp sand to kill off some tributes. Katniss wants to run, knowing that once the plan works, it will be just them, trying to kill each other off, and somehow it all leads back to this.
If you die, and I live, I'd have nothing. Nobody else that I care about.
Peeta.
You have to live. For them.
What about you?
Nobody needs me.
I do.
I'm done. I'm fed up with this. So for the remainder of these moments, I'm going to refer to Joanna's one remark that practically sums all this up.
Love is weird.
Yes, it is, sexy tree lady. Yes, it is. Night falls upon them and they begin the wiring. BT splits up the boys as his personal bodyguards and the girls to carry the wire to the water. Katniss and Peeta are a little hesitant on this pairing, but eventually settle with a goodbye kiss. So now Katniss and Joanna are doing their duty before the wire is cut, and they're ambushed. But Joanna does something very clever.
Stay down.
In the book, she does all this without warning, making Katniss feel like she's been betrayed. But I actually like the movie version better. It stays consistent to how Joanna's been acting very loyal to the group, and specifically to Katniss. She's crude, got some tood, but never once did I doubt her. As Joanna drives the remaining tributes away, Katniss regains her strength to go looking for Peeta. She returns to the tree, finding BT spazzing on the floor and aiming an arrow right at Finnick. To trust or not to trust? This is what Snow deeply anticipates, but thankfully, Haymitch's words find its way back to Katniss.
Remember who the real enemy is.
She withdraws her aim from Finnick and instead decides to backfire the lightning and break the fucking force field. And yes, that line would be suited better for a sci-fi, but apparently it's for this. Nevertheless, this scene couldn't look any more heroic. Winning the fight, stopping the games. Bruised up from the impact, she's watching the dome tear itself apart. Debris falling around her. And then an aircraft comes through the holy light and carries her up like that one scene from Toy Story. Now that is beautiful. She's probably dying on the inside, a little internal bleeding, but just still beautiful. Next scene, she wakes up in the aircraft next to BT. Confused as balls, she takes a syringe and enters a room with Haymitch, Finnick, and Plutarch. They try to explain to her about the start of the rebellion, but all she cares about is Peeta. They tell her that he and Joanna have been taken by the Capitol. And you can guess the response.
You son of a bitch! Son of a... You promised me that you would save him over me! You promised me! You're a liar! You're a liar!
They sedate her, waking up again with Gale next to her. He fills her in on the safety of her family, but District 12 is no longer in existence. Katniss takes all this into the next sequel, ending catching fire. I'm just going to say now, this was a great adaptation. I mean, there really wasn't much to correct because the movie followed the book word to word. They fixed the whole shaky cam thing from the first movie, and the scenes were actually represented well, if not better. I can honestly say that the movie proved itself, giving it the win today. From the way I kept glorifying this movie, was there really any doubt? I mean, these scenes that deserved emotion were delivered. The scenes that were humorous were still funny. And yeah, there were some scenes that didn't make the cut, like Katniss meeting Bonnie and Twill, the runaways from District 8, but that's a change that can really be squeezed into Mockingjay. What it really came down to was pacing. And again, these movies have a tendency to rush in order to reach the action. But for this story in particular, I think it was accepted. One of the problems with the book was that it made needless chapters to demonstrate the consequences of the first book. This movie, however, was able to settle the tone and introduce the main problems quickly. We knew what we need to know. The peacekeepers are making living unbearable. Katniss screwed up and she's going to pay the consequences. I don't think this really needed to be said, but since Katniss's tedious thoughts were absent from the film, it made the story more enjoyable. Like how the movie demonstrated, Katniss's body language carried her feelings. It was easy to understand and didn't drag the point across. And because the beginning before the games felt compressed, I actually felt like Quell had a bit of a chance. Just a bit. Just. Without extending on the 9-month period back at home, we don't get much of the ignoring and the bitter distance between the two. Scenes with Peeta and Katniss were slimmed down only to the game. It really seemed like Quell had more screen time with Katniss and in some cases glorified their relationship even more. This is kind of what I was looking for. The movie made the love triangle more believable than the book by giving each lover an equal amount of screen time. And yeah, I know Peeta has technically more since they shared time in the games, but at least in the beginning the shift between Quell and Peeta seemed equal enough. As for who it's going to be, well, only Mockingjay can tell. I do appreciate the book's development in the plot and it still dominates with the action scenes, but I believe the movie kept everything balanced and still maintained the essence of Catching Fire, giving it the win today. And with that said, those are my final thoughts on Catching Fire. And if you don't agree, well, read the book, watch the movie, and make your own opinion. I'm Katana, and it looks like our next review is going to take us to a dark and scary time, full of stress and tragedy to some parts of the world. But I think it would actually be good for us to educate ourselves on this journey. The Boy in the Striped Pajamas is up next. Be excited for that. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Be sure to be safe in your Black Friday shoppings. And I'll see you all in the next review. Take care, guys. Hey guys, just wanted to say thanks again for watching this review. If I made a good impression, why not subscribe and stick around for future entertainment? And also follow my new Facebook page to stay updated every now and then. Thought this society was a bit rough? A bit tough to handle? Well, why not check out my last review on The Giver, where everything is as safe as a censorship. Got a book/movie review you'd like to see one of these days? Well, just leave a suggestion in the comments down below and I'll be sure to check it out. Until our next meeting, I'm going to continue bitching about this love because it's seriously unfair. How could you do this to Quell? He works in the mines while Peeta's playing Baker. He deserves better than Katniss, and Katniss deserves Quell. End of story. Bye.